Well, Aimee LaLiberte is a self-proclaimed chief number cruncher. She's much more than that. What John and I experienced today on the podcast was this amazing balance between the tactics of number crunching and finance and the necessity of having the right mindset about it. We talked today to Aimee about creating the right intention first and then following up with everything from technology to software to what her signature model is for cash flow and forecasting. Here's Aimee LaLiberte.
Aimee, welcome to the podcast. We look forward to speaking with you today as the founder and owner of my Virtual CFO. Look forward to diving a little bit deeper into how you came to be an entrepreneur yourself, what you do for small businesses, and then maybe as we dive a little bit deeper, what can small businesses and entrepreneurs learn from your experience of working with other owners just like themselves? But let's just really start with your background. Tell us a little bit more about your experience, how you came to start your own firm in the first place.
Yeah. So I spent the first half of my career, so that I would say the first 15 to 17 years, working with organizations, largely colleges and universities, on building out their fundraising arms of their programs. And so I created this wealth of information in regards to not only being the person that was having conversations with prospective donors and asking for philanthropic support, but also learning how the back end operation was. And that's really where I saw my strength come out, where, interfacing with the finance department in order to make sure that all of the accounting structures and all of that were in place, and building out campaigns that would create transformation, not only for the donor, but also for the organization, from the capacity of 50 million all the way up to $100 million in campaigns. And what I had found was in those relationships that I've had over the years, I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I found that just in conversations about money, that a key part that was missing from business owners is that they started their businesses because they wanted to create or do a thing. They didn't create a business because they wanted to get really nerdy with their books, right?
Yeah.
And their numbers. And so I found that this was a gap, and it was a really big gap I found in the environment of your $10 million business and annual revenue and below. So when I decided that I was ready to have my own thing and to create my own business, I thought this bookkeeping is something that is a tangible thing that business owners will happily outsource, because it is one of the first things that they do outsource as soon as they're able to. And so that's where I started. And then it just grew from there. And so over the course of the last 6 years, I have just developed a very specific signature model that creates the fundamental foundation of bookkeeping and doing the forecasting, the CFO, the cash flow management, all of the things, but then also creating and developing the mindset work that inevitably comes with businesses, with business ownership, and just really managing your mind through the ebbs and flows of having your own business.
Okay. So much like most entrepreneurs, to your point, that like to create things, you saw an opening with entrepreneurs who like to create things, but weren't necessarily minding the financial side of the business, and said, there's an entrepreneurial opportunity here for me to create something that can really help businesses, and then launch your business, my Virtual CFO. How long ago did you launch that company?
6 years ago.
6 years. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
And then started working with small to medium-sized businesses and assisting them with their finances right out of the gate.
Yeah. So I started out working with, it seemed even still today, my sweet spot tends to be anybody that's at $1 million all the way up to about 5 million.
Okay.
I do have clients that are in multiple six figures. But what I tend to find is that for a company that's creating $1 million, between 1 million and $5 million, they have a really solid team structure in place, but they don't necessarily need a full operational finance department, but they just need somebody in a fractional capacity. And that's where I found the gap, and that they were able to pay for the service that I provide, but they don't have the burden of carrying a payroll for someone that does the stuff that I do. So it's a fractional relationship that I have with my clients.
Gotcha. So, it's interesting when you say that. Why is that the case? That a business that's between $1 to $5 million has a solid team in place, but not the solid finance team? What's the problem there? Wouldn't you think that the solid team they should have is in finance first and then build out the rest of it? Or is it because they got to generate the revenues that they're more focused on the sales and ops and finance comes last? Or what is your hypothesis on that?
Yeah, so my theory is that I really think that when you're just starting out, like I recommend anybody that's just starting out, like you need a bookkeeping system that you have familiarity with, but that it's not the thing that you need to like invest tons of money in. You just need the system. So you maybe bring somebody in to create the system, but you're not that like you don't need someone staying with you to continue to like foster the system. You're going to manage it. But I think like sales is the oxygen of any business. If you don't have sales, I mean, why have a finance team in order to like not like reconcile your books and create the forecast? I mean, you can do all of that, but if you're not generating sales. So I think that that's what happens. Like, but where I think that the lack is that I tend to work with clients that are in service-based businesses, that are professionals that have a high cost of goods sold in terms of like direct costs. So in the medical profession, I work with, where there's doctors and there's providers and there's therapists where, there's money, like you're creating the money, but then it's going out the door in order to cover the payroll piece of it. So there's a big difference. And I don't know if businesses realize it, that a lot of people are going after that like revenue, like that $1 million revenue goal, right? Because that's like a vanity metric that everyone strives for. Sure. But ultimately, like go for it if that's what like you feel called to do. But ultimately, what I like to do is if you're $1 million business, but yet you've got, let's say, 40% of that is in your cost of goods sold, like paying for your direct costs for labor and all of that, you're a $600,000 business. Now, listen, like in terms of like what you have for operating management and all of that. And I think that like that sort of like, that seems very like basic, I think, to like a financial person, but it is 100% not like how the way that they business owners delineate and see that, because they just see like there's money coming in and there's money going out, and it's a very simplistic way. But I think when you start to really categorize and divide things out, you're able to create the constraints. So if you're a $600,000 operating business on an annual basis, do you really need a full-fledged finance department? Probably not.
Yeah. It's interesting too, and I think this is more and more common. Maybe it's because of this new gig economy that we're in, or entrepreneurism is really rampant right now. I mean, a lot of young kids are starting their own companies, but it's impossible to expect an entrepreneur to have a core competency in sales, core competency in operations, core competency in HR, core competency in finance, core competency. It's just impossible. Everybody has a core in what they're strong at, and it seems like the philosophy of centralizing what your core competency is. So if you're really good at sales and ops, and centralize that, own that, have the employees in that, and manage that, but decentralize the areas where you're not core with experts that can really provide you kind of that fractional level service that prevents you having to worry about your staffing and you're this and you're that, but you can outsource it. Seems to be becoming more and more common, and seems like if you were starting a business today, focus on what you're really good at and decentralize everything else with experts. Is that kind of core to your belief system as well right now?
It is. And with the exception of one thing, one of the things that I always get concerned about whenever I have any sort of consult calls with prospective clients is if I get the sense that there is this like rush and hurry tendency, because they just are like, they come and they all do with like, I'm making all these sales, but like it's not reflected in my bank account, and like those sorts of things that like just are like flags to me of saying like they don't understand like the ebb and flow of an accounting system, which is 100% fine. So like I understand like that's like a cash flow issue, and we just need to really like elevate their awareness of what all the things are, and so they're in the right place. But the other piece of it is if the rush and hurry is coming because there is this, like, if I even feel like a sense of like an abdication of responsibility, like that's a red flag for me, because I don't believe that, like, I'm okay with someone outsourcing their finances to my company because they want to, like, they understand that their core competency is better served in another area. Yep. But not in the sense of like, I'm doing this and now I've washed my hands of it and I will not have a relationship with money. The avoidant relationship with money as a CEO is just like, it's almost become a deal breaker for me in terms of working with new clients. It's just like, you have to be willing to have a relationship with money, even if it tells you the things that you don't want. Like if you have a loss, like we need to make sure that you're elevating that awareness, because there is like something in the mindset that we need to do an adjustment on, and we need to coach through, that we need to really figure out, so that you can become the business owner that can create any money financial goal you set.
Love it.
It's almost like owners that aren't willing to put the reality on the table of their financial situation, you're not going to be able to coach.
No, because if they're like, I just don't want to deal with it, I'm done. That to me is just saying that it's an avoidant relationship, which is a relationship for sure. But in terms of like, if they have like these aspirations and these dreams to become a like another version of themselves as a CEO, but they're not willing to do the basic thing of like, we're going to sit down and you may not like the numbers that you see, but like these numbers are neutral. They're telling a story and they're really helpful for you so that you can make decisions that will foster the growth that you desire. And so, yeah, I mean, 100%. But I think that there's also some grace that has to be extended, because I think, like for us, I think having a relationship with money and topic around money is often like it's in like the top 3 taboo topics. You don't talk about it. And I think more and more there's more like let's have a conversation around it. And I think that there's even a greater awareness of like not necessarily like really starting to question like the hustle culture and whether or not that is something that people want to subscribe to, or is it about like really answering the question for yourself, what is enough?
Mm-hmm. Speak about the hustle culture. I haven't heard those two words put together. I think I know what that means, but would love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, so I mean, there's so much information and research that's done in the support of like, like in the United States, our full-time work week is considered 40 hours on average, which is not the same as other parts of the world, right? And there's also often this like understanding now, especially with the way that technology has supported us, that we are constantly plugged in. And so we are not, it's no longer that work and personal are like separate entities. They are very much commingled. And I think that there's this increasing expectation that if we are to be successful, then we need to do things like answer the emails on the weekends and late at night and overwork and work beyond in order to get ahead. And so when you are wrapped up in that whole hustle culture, I feel like there is this invitation to like introduce even more stress. There's an invitation for you to not take the vacation if you're like if you work for a company, that you don't take vacations out of fear of like, I'm going to take a week off and then end up paying for it for the next month. So there's like that hustle thing. And I think that what's happening, and then when you're starting your own business, it's like, I have to go, 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 go. And instead of really just pausing and taking like a time out to say, like, what is it that I'm looking to create? What is it that I need? What are my basic necessities? How I define them now, and what I consider as my necessities are very different than I'm sure the two of yours are, but that's okay, because it doesn't matter. Like, it's not like mine are right and you're wrong. They're just like, they are ours and they're defined by our values, right? So then like really defining that and then creating a intention around like, what does that look like and what is enough? And I think that in this day and age, there's more and more of that dialogue starting to emerge, because people are burnt out. People are like, they're like, what is it? What is this all for? Like, I'm working. I'm living to work and not working to live. And that is like no longer, I think this is like, there's like a new movement happening of like, maybe I don't need a multiple 7-figure business to create what I think is enough. Maybe it's looking like this. And maybe it is, but really just slowing down and asking yourself that question and having that super intention is really where I think like the hustle culture becomes like questioned.
Aimee, I want to role play with you. Can we role play?
Sure.
I'm going to be one of our listeners who heard what you said about hustle culture and challenges it. So, Aimee, let me get this straight. You want me to go take vacation. You want me to not commingle work and personal somehow, and don't worry about overworking to try and get ahead. Look, I'm trying to keep the lights on here. I'm trying to get every sale I can. And you're telling me to not hustle, like not buying it. What do
Yeah.
you suggest for entrepreneurs who feel that way?
I really truly think, and I think I think it's a mindset thing. And I also think that it is about a relationship that you have with time and the fact that there are some beliefs that you have embedded into your brain that goes to like, in order for me to create the results that I need in order to live the life that I desire, I need to hustle. And I think there's an invitation there to say, like, is this true? And, you know, I'm not implying that like I'm always fascinated by this whole like, like you think like you man like the manifestation of things, right? And I feel like there's like a little bit of like this like borderline like woo-ness that happens in that thing. And I think that that is like a misconstrued in terms of what the implications of that is. It means that like if you create intention around that, it's not about like I desire this and I'm just going to keep thinking this on repeat and then all of a sudden it's just going to magically appear. But it's like at the forefront of like the person that you are at this moment, creating the results that you have at this moment, is not the person that's going to create the results that you desire. There needs to be some, and it's not about taking like different types of action. It's really about like, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings about those thoughts that are driving that action? And it's really that mindset work that has to get done. I'm not diminishing or saying like, don't like if you have to work in order to keep the lights on and that is like your truth. I'm not saying like don't do that, but what I'm saying is that like really like be intentional. If you are overworking right now, is it because you haven't like raised your prices? Are your prices aligned with how like the value that you create? And are you willing to do the work in order to stretch yourself to step into the person that does charge the rates that they like that are appropriate for like the value that you create? And so it's really just about all of that because chances are even if we just make it like a neutral thing with the math, like if you're someone who is undercharging for your service and you know that it's taking you, let's say 20 hours and you're charging $100 and you're doing 20 hours, like you're better off like working somewhere else and making more money because you're not going to have like you're underpaying yourself and you're underserving. And I feel like that's often the issue that comes in. It's not overworking that's the issue. It's usually like something else there that we really need to uncover in the
Mm.
process.
I love your style and the composure that you answered that challenge with, and your wording around an invitation to challenge something. What I wrote down was an invitation to challenge assumptions about time and what hard work means and the necessity of it to create the lifestyle that you want. What are some of the assumptions that are consistent that you see with entrepreneurs that you work with them on the mindset to have a different assumption or to challenge those assumptions? What are they?
Yeah. So one of them is that I'm too busy. I don't have enough time. A lot of the thoughts around time are very much attached to scarcity time mindset. And there's also like, I will say, as someone who, like, I am someone who I paid for my own college education, I worked 3 jobs. Like, hustling is something that I know, and I know that, like, I am very, very familiar with. And it is something that when I first started my business, it was not uncommon for me to be working till 2 a.m. And I'm not saying that as like, I'm saying it as like on the other side of it is that I don't I believe I didn't need to do that. And I believe that I was buying into this whole like over delivering means that I'm overworking, which means that I'm staying up all late. And it's really just questioning all those things. And so what I think happens is like slowing down and really like as simple as like put time or put how many hours you're working and put down all of it, like, and just write down all of the thoughts that you have. Chances are they're going to be, I'm too busy. I never have enough time. I'm always running out of time. Things take longer than I think. And there's it's all going to be in the realm of scarcity. I can almost guarantee you. And then what it is that can you create intention that is, I choose to spend my time like this? and not in a victim role of like, I have to do this, because essentially we don't have to do anything. And I think that we truly believe, our minds are truly like puts us in these like shackles, if you will, of like, we have to spend our time like this. We have to do this. We actually don't have to do anything. Now, there are often consequences. So like when it comes to taxes, you don't have to pay your taxes if you don't want to, except for the fact that you might end up in jail for not paying them. So there is like a consequence to it. But if you don't want to pay your taxes, like there is like a downside to it. And are you like, are you okay with that downside? Chances are we all are like, no. We choose to pay our taxes because we don't want to be in jail.
Yeah. You know, it's as you're talking about this, it just has me thinking about, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's like, as an entrepreneur, to Rich's example, well, I have to work. I have to keep the lights on. It's a survival mechanism. And the more you feel like you need to survive, the more you're hustling, the more you're burning yourself out, and you just keep going and you keep going and you keep going. And then, you would walk through the whole pyramid if we really wanted to, right? From survival to safety to belongingness to esteem and ego to self-actualization. Like, you can walk through that whole Maslow. But initially, I think, what's happening is entrepreneurs get in this, their assumption is, I'm too busy. I need to keep the lights on. I need to do this. So they just keep running on that, I can envision like the rat on the treadmill, right? Just kind of going around and around and around and around and around and around the rat race, as Guy Kiyosaki from like Rich Dad would call it, right? You're just caught in this rat race. How do you get them out? Like, part of me feels, Aimee, through this conversation, you're just as much a financial mindset coach as you are an actual, fractional CFO. How do you get them out? Because what you said earlier, I love, which is, if they have this struggle and avoidance culture of money, you cannot work with them, because you need them to be present and aware and eyes wide open in order for there to be productive activity. So let's assume that they do, but they're scared. They got to keep the lights on. They got to do this, and their mindset isn't quite where it needs to be. They have a scarcity mindset. How do you get them to cross over? How long is that? And what actually do you do? What would be step 1, step 2, step 3, get that person out of that position?
Yeah. So a lot of it, like, I mean, essentially you're 100% right. And the first thing is that it's like the awareness around it. And I think so often there's not the awareness. Like they say these, like they say things like, I don't have time, as if that is like truth.
Yeah.
And it's that it's a fact. And it's like they're, and what I say is like, no, like that's a thought, and that's optional. Like that is a thought that you're choosing. And that's actually a belief of yours, because you have like embedded it into your brain. So it's just, our brains are such efficient things. And we can just listen to something on repeat, and it is just, it's looking for efficiency.
Yep.
So if you want to change your thoughts on time, on money, on like, like any of those things, you have to like create the awareness around it. So like, that's the first thing, is like really just checking in on like where you are. And if you are somebody who has scarcity around time, or scarcity around money, or avoidance with money, just knowing that you're in the game. It's not even about changing anything yet. It's just knowing that there is like, I have this going there. And then it's about questioning, does that serve me? Does that serve me now? Does it serve me for what I really aspire and want to create in my life? And if the answer is yes, then we don't have to do anything. But chances are 99% of the time, the answer is like, this doesn't serve me.
Yeah.
So then it's like, where do you want to be? So here's where you are. This is where you want to be. And it's kind of like a Google map. When you punch in the coordinates of where you want to go, it's going to be like, here's a route, here's a route, here's a route. You're going to have different routes, right? And essentially, if we say we want to be someone who has a relationship with money, who sits down and reviews their finances, and knows that it has nothing to do, these numbers are neutral and they have nothing to do with like my worthiness as a human, like that's the goal that I want to create for myself, then what we need to do is start working towards that. It's not like, oh, I have awareness, this is what I want, and I'm just going to like leap over here. No. And if anybody tells you that, That's just not true, because this has been the thought that you've had on repeat for however old you are now, right? So like it took that long for this to be created. It's not going to take that long for you to get rid of it. But what it's going to do is like we need to create bridge thoughts to get you there. So it's like and I think that's where having someone like me involved in your business will help you, because it's like I am the guy that's helping you facilitate your own transformation.
Yeah.
And like I'm guiding you there the whole time. It's not like there's no rush or hurry in it. And are you all in on this journey, even if it takes the rest of your life to do so?
Yep.
It's not to say that it takes that long, but you have to be all in on being able to create that transformation. If you're someone who you know is going to continue to avoid the relationship with money, then I'm not saying you can't create any financial result that you wish to have, but you're going to make it 10 times harder than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Can you help me here? I've got 3 things written down. I have awareness, like step 1, awareness of your current state of thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I've got like step 2 is question, and that is identifying and separating your beliefs versus facts.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got the 3rd piece is identifying your desired state.
Mm-hmm.
So work with me on this. So I'm an entrepreneur and I go, my current state of thoughts. Yes, I think I never have enough time. And I'm concerned about going broke. Okay, I'm up for questioning that. Everybody has the same amount of time. It's not a fact that I have less time than other people. I can probably do more than what I think. What I would like is I'd like to feel more comfortable with the amount of time I have. And I'd like to be less scared about money.
Mm-hmm.
How do you work with me from here?
Okay. So, yeah. So here's what we do. We start off with like, we're going to talk about the time one first, and then we can jump over to the money thing, but they're all going to be the same thing. So time is neutral. We're agreeing.
By the way, I love the energy pickup you just had. You're like, okay, I'm in. Like, let's dig in. Like that was a really cool moment. Just sorry, had to point that out. That was awesome.
Okay, so time is neutral. We know that. Money is neutral. So in both circumstances, like the topic that we're talking about is neutral, right? So I could have it like, so the thought that you have is around time. I never have time. Now in this scenario, if you can pretend to be like the person that is coming to me with, I never have enough time. Tell me, when you think the thought, I never have enough time, what feeling do you have?
Anxiety, rushed.
Okay.
That I am not able to accomplish enough quickly enough, and my business, or my family may suffer as a result.
Yep. Okay. So I'm going to stop you there, because all the things, like, they're all different feelings, but they're all in the realm of like anxious, doubt, worry. So when you have the feelings of doubt, worry, and anxiety, and you have the thought, I never have time, what actions do you take?
Extending the amount of time available by taking less breaks, staying up later, waking up earlier, and pulling time from other areas of life to make more time. Or potentially rushing through things to make more time.
Yep. And what is it that so those are things that you are doing. So you're taking things away, like you're minimizing your personal time, you're extending time to you're extending the time to complete a task. What are the things so those are things you are doing. What are the things that you're not doing?
Reconciling his books.
Yeah. No, but like what I'm saying is that there's things that you're doing. And so the result that you're creating is like, you're validating that thought of I never have enough time. So that just is repeating. And so when you work with someone who's like a coach and who can really start to slow that down for you, like, so there's your awareness, right? And that's your like, and we can really start to think like, I never have enough time. Is that true? And then we really start to examine that, and we start to process the feelings around, and this is like stuff that like, I don't think any human, like no one likes to sit in discomfort. Like anxiety is not like a feeling that I'm like, please come. I'm so excited for you to be here. Like, but if I just allow it to process in my body and I allow it to be there and to not have judgment on it and be like, of course anxiety is here. Of course it is. I feel like I really want to create these results and I am working so hard. And I don't know if I believe I'm going to be able to do this. I don't have the evidence other than just this sheer will within myself to do that. And if you're willing to turn around and understand that the thought, I never have enough time, is an optional thought. If you're willing to agree that the thought, I never have enough time, creates worry and doubt and drives the actions that are not actions that you want to be taking, then of course you're going to create the result that you're going to have continued scarcity around time. So instead, what we need to do is, it's not like, okay, we're going to just wipe that one off and we're going to create another one. Is, like it's just practicing a belief structure. Like, what is your thoughts? What are the thoughts the intentional thoughts that you want to have on time? What are the intentional thoughts that you want to have about money? And really adding that in. It's not denying the thoughts that are currently there. It's about questioning whether or not they are the ones that are going to get you where you want to go. But it's that practice. And I think that's the thing. It's like with anything, whether it's like I was a former competitive swimmer. When I was in season, I was practicing 5 days a week. I was lifting. I was doing all the things. As soon as the off season came, I did nothing. And then like the season came back again. And man, that first month, man, it was tough. And so like, it's the same thing. It's like, if I'm not willing to work my brain muscle and to engage new thoughts that I think are intentional thoughts that will serve me, that will never, like, I can never get to a point where I am never going to, the thought I never have enough time is going to be something that I no longer believe. And that's not to say that it's completely removed from the system, but it's just not the go-to thought that you have on time. Mm-hmm. It's, I do what I say I'm going to do. I choose to spend my time the way that I like plan my calendar, or whatever it is that you do.
If I can, Aimee, I'd like to reset us just a little bit. Mm-hmm. Something you said earlier, and I want to bring it back to the finance component of, what we're talking about a lot now is growth mindset versus fixed mindset, right? And things of that nature, which is really a phenomenon that exists in all of us to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But really, when you think about finance, something you said earlier that is so critical is, what am I really trying to create? And I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and you learn in business school right off the bat, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you should always start off by knowing what your exit strategy is. Yet, I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years, and really up until recently, never even thought about exit strategy. I would talk with Rich, oh, that's a really good idea. Let's install ATMs in grocery stores, and we would start an ATM business. Not really thinking about why we're doing it. We were just doing it. And way too many times, entrepreneurs start things, become partners in things, grow things for the sake of growing it, just for growing its sake, not really knowing what they're ultimately trying to do, not just for that business, but for themselves. And to your point earlier, you said something way earlier on, which is a lot of entrepreneurs don't really even know when enough is enough. What are they really striving for? And they could drive themselves bananas. They could lose loved ones because they're not spending enough time with them. They could do so many different things in their life to ultimately be miserable because they were so geared on this financial result that was not really even well thought out. So how much of what you do works with an entrepreneur to reset to that question? What are you really trying to create? Not just for your business, but for you as the entrepreneur. How much is really rooted in that question ultimately?
I want to say everything. Because here's the thing. If you turn around and you think like, I need to create $1 million business, and then we say why, and we like really get to the root of it, and we start to say, okay, what does your lifestyle look like? And I don't mean like, I mean, we can create the lifestyle that you have right now, but what's like the next elevated lifestyle? Like, what is like the, like, so we can like make those, like, we can do all those assumptions. And ultimately what I have found out, and I have uncovered through all of my work with clients is that what they think they need to create for their business is usually less than what they like entered the conversation with.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm not telling you that you shouldn't, if you want to create whatever the financial goal is and you love all your reasons for it, then please go do it. But so often, I think that there is like more and more of this very like intentional 360-degree perspective on life and like the different things that people want. It's not just necessarily, I want to create this business because I have like an ego to stroke, but it's more of like, I want to create comfort in my life. And this is how I define comfort.
Yeah.
I want to be able to do this with my children. And like, this is how I define that. And it could very well change. And I think that's the other thing as well, is that this exercise is not something that it's like a one and done type of situation. You're writing this in pencil because it will inevitably change.
Sure.
You change as a CEO as you go further down your entrepreneurial journey. What you thought was important on day one is not important on year 5.
Sure.
And it's like really just always the checking in with yourself in regards to that and defining it. What often I think happens is that I think they're striving for something and they're striving for it without the like check-in of the intention. And that's what I mean by that.
Yeah, it goes back to that Google Map example. Like,
yeah,
they're running, they just don't know where they're running to and why are they running so hard and why are they blowing out their kneecaps when they don't need to.
Right.
So that makes a lot of sense. Where does, you have something I believe on your website called the finance edit.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know what it is, but it seems to me, a lot of businesses get going, they get started, they get to this $1 million to $5 million phase. And maybe that's what it means. They need this finance edit, this kind of reboot, this assessment of where they stand and what are the things they need to do to sharpen up in different areas. Is that what it is? Or can you please tell me a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, sure. So what that is that what I have found is that businesses, they want to get to like their first mark is maybe 6 figures or multiple 6 figures. And what they tend to do is they struggle to get there because they don't have a financial system in place. Mm-hmm. And they don't have the mindset work in place and they don't have that practicality. So the finance edit it's a group program. It's a group coaching program where I do 2 things. Number 1 is we take care of the action stuff. So, like the bookkeeping, all of that, like the forecasting and really creating that relationship with numbers and like the really like nerdy, like, let's look at your income statement and let's talk about cash flow and let's do all those exciting things. But then also like, let's create intentional goals for you based on what your needs are. But instead of being in a position where you're going to outsource this function of your business, what it is that you're the person that is doing it at the beginning because we're removing the abdication of responsibility. You are going to be responsible and then you're going to outsource it, but you're going to outsource it with knowing that you are a confident member of the, like sitting at the table, understanding exactly what the finances are. You're just not the one running the thing. So we have accountability where you come in and like, you take the time to do the books. Now, the thing that's really important that I want to mention is that I think people think that like the task of bookkeeping, even though like it doesn't sound exciting or like anything, like it takes forever. With the advent of technology, it is so fast that you're able to do like your actual like reconciliations a lot faster now than ever before. And it's really just giving you the evidence that you can do that, but doing so with like under like someone like me who does this all the time. Mm-hmm. So it's like this combination of if you're not really ready to do an outsourced function, you get the accountability, you get the coaching, and you get the business acumen in order to get you scaled to where you're going to be, and then you outsource.
Got it. So when you say group coaching program, does that mean that if the 3 of us were entrepreneurs and we kind of got signed up with the finance edit, the 3 of us would share our stories with each other, group accountability amongst CEOs or entrepreneurs? Or do you mean group meaning you, them, and your team?
Yeah. So the way that it would work is that you are a member of the program. And so every month we have a group coaching program where we take we bring somebody on. And so it's exactly what Rich was saying, like, okay, like I'm having lots of thoughts about I'm going to go broke. And we start to really unpack that, but it's all under the guise of like, there is like a monthly theme. So one of the things that we haven't talked about, but like what people I think avoid doing is like, what is their money story and what is the story that they've been telling themselves about money up until this point, because there's a lot of beliefs that come out of that, like telling that narrative. And really just, again, it's the forum for you to create the intentional relationship with money, because your relationship with money is a very important relationship in our world. Like money is a huge part of how we transact in this world, and a relationship with it is going to be different for all of us, but knowing how you wish to curate that relationship is what is going to be the difference in how you scale and grow your business.
Very powerful. I'd be curious if you could give our listeners a sample of when you say technology for speed of bookkeeping and reconciliation. Can you offer a sample of what is the technology that's being underused consistently by entrepreneurs that by listening to this podcast, they're like, Aimee said I could set it up this way. No way. I never thought of that. I should do that like today. And I may even want to follow up with Aimee to get more tips from her. What would be something like that?
Yeah. So I think that, again, the type of entrepreneur that I'm talking about is someone who like maybe is running their books off of an Excel spreadsheet, or maybe not even like, or doing it like once a year, like, or every 90 days, like that lacks the consistency in it. And so what I am offering is that if you leverage technology, a software, so the accounting software, I have clients that are on QuickBooks, but the accounting software that I use primarily is Xero. And so what you can turn around and do is if you create the bookkeeping system and the framework in order for you to do that, you can then like add additional layers where you're putting rules on, because chances are there's a lot of consistency in transactions that you make and all of that. We can get all of that automated for you so that all your reconciliation is done. And then we curate customized reports for you that you're able to then have a money date every single week that you do your reconciliations, you run your financials, and then you do your mindset, like your intentional mindset work around these financials, so that you can say like, what are the results? Like, how much money did I bring in this week? Was this what I forecasted? Why or why not? And so it's like really just like we're exercising that financial muscle.
And I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with Xero, and maybe others are. Does Xero integrate with QuickBooks, or is it a standalone?
It's a different accounting software. So QuickBooks and Xero are competitors of each other.
And some of the curated reports you were speaking of, they're accessible in Xero, but they are not in QuickBooks?
No, so you can get reports and you can customize reports in QuickBooks, but what Xero does is that there's more elevation in terms of like, particularly like if you've got something that's categorizing your chart of accounts as an expense, but what you want to do is create it so that it's considered a chart of account, a cost of goods sold, so that you can like create a gross profit based off of the the amount that is like customized to your business. Like the ease of being able to do those sorts of customizations are I find a lot more user friendly than QuickBooks. And then the other piece also is just like sort of like the integration of different software. So if you are a company that has payroll, then like there's certain integrations that you can do, and there's integrations with QuickBooks. I just feel like Xero was intentionally designed as a cloud-based accounting software system. It was based with the understanding of minimalism, and it was designed with a non-accountant in mind. Whereas I think QuickBooks started out as a desktop software and just sort of morphed and configured into it. So I feel like there's just a different type of user that was considered in the design creation.
Thanks for that. You had talked earlier about that you had a signature model, and that sounds pretty cool. And then you followed up with words like cash flow and forecasting. Can you talk to me a bit about your signature model and how it relates with cash flow and forecasting?
Yeah. So One of the things that I have is that I think that bookkeeping is often seen as a reflection of what has happened in the past and then measuring it. And I think what often happens is that firms are doing their bookkeeping and their reconciliations almost like 30 days after it happens. And so my signature process is that regardless of the type of service you get with my company, your books are done in real time, meaning that we are in your books at least once a week doing your reconciliations in real time. So you have that. So that's there. So if like your numbers are coming to you, and if something does not, like if you know that, like, oh, I thought that I was going to have $5,000 in this week and I only have 1,000, what's going on? So that you're able to make adjustments. It's kind of like when you're a pilot driving, like, with a piloting a plane, like they're constantly taking measurements and tinkering with it, because if they even go like the slightest bit off course, it will take them in the wrong direction, which is why the real time thing is really important. The other thing is when it comes to the cash flow management, I'm a certified Profit First professional. If you're not familiar with the book, it's Profit First is a book written by Mike Michalowicz, and it's a cash flow management system that helps business owners create, like it's a series of other bank accounts. You've got one main bank account that all the money comes in, and then there's sub accounts that come through it. And what you're able to do, it's almost like taking a dieter's mentality and applying it in a business model, meaning that if you've got money allocated just for your taxes, then you never have to have the thought, I'm not going to have enough money for taxes, because we have created the intention to put money aside for taxes. You will always be a profitable business because we've decided that we're going to take our profit first. And then you're going to pay yourself because we've decided that as an owner that you will be paying yourself. And then finally, whatever is left over is going to be your operating expenses. And that's what you're going to use to create the business and the quality in the experience that you desire for your service delivery. So there's that piece of it. And then it's also the forecasting. So it's, again, running the numbers and, again, creating, like, answering that question, what is enough and how do I create that in my business?
So it sounds like Profit First is really about, the word that I've heard from you most over the last period of time is intention. And Profit First is about setting an intention with money so that you can ultimately have security that all your bills are paid, your profit is going to be there. Let's reduce the anxiety so you can perform at your best.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
And here's the thing, there's the simplicity. It sounds very simple, and it is. And yet so often, like, businesses are operating from like one invoice to the other. They're cash, like there is such cash constraint. And so the invitation is, it's like sticking to it is the hard part. Like, are you willing to stick in those intentional constraints? And that's, like, again, that's where the mindset comes in.
I love that. Well, it looks like I'm going to be getting myself a book. I've heard of this book before, but I've never heard it explained the way you explained it. And I find it absolutely fascinating and too simple. If your business is going to make 10%, then every money that comes into that primary bank account, put 10% into your profit account, put X amount into your tax account, put X amount into your SG&A account, put X amount into your cost of goods sold account, and manage within it. And that's another way as well of, the whole concept of that revenue is vanity, but it's really cash is king, and cash that's sitting in your bank account. If you can manage that in certain ways, that puts restrainers on you overexpending where you shouldn't be spending, or managing your AR, managing your APs. I really love that idea. And Rich, the way you summed it up as well, really get rid of these, you mentioned earlier, invitation to challenge your assumptions. Get rid of those assumptions that maybe you have in your money story, and be intentional about what you're doing. And I guess, Aimee, what I've learned from this conversation is you're not just a fractional CFO or a fractional bookkeeper. You really provide a mindset shift with the people you work with. And then on top of that, will help them make sure that, they move in the right direction. But if they're not willing to shift their mindset on avoidance of money, then it defeats the purpose of you even getting involved.
Yeah. I mean, essentially it's no longer in where I am in my business right now. I know that what I offer is very unique. And I know that there are lots of business owners that desire this service. So if someone is not all in, that's totally fine. I'm just not your person, and that's great. And you deserve to find the person that resonates with you. but there's a lot of people that are looking for someone like me. And I wish that there was more people like me, because I feel like this is the type of service that business owners need in order to feel greater confidence and clarity around their financials.
Sure, sure. And certainly I know a few entrepreneurs that do have this avoidance with money, but I would like to shift them. Do you work with them as well before you would take them on as a client? I mean, is there always a chance that someone may, you know, initially tell you, hey, I avoid money and I don't want to be part of this, but you're able to shift them through this process and still work with them and give them that chance?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that a lot of that comes from like just having like, you know, I feel like whenever I do consultation calls and if somebody's looking for something very specific,
Yeah.
like if they show up and they're showing up and they're open and they're willing to share and they're willing to show the evidence of change and they're willing to be like have these thoughts that these thoughts that they have like questioned and like have the holes poked in them, then of course I think it is. They don't need to be someone that's like, okay, I'm ready for the transformation, let's do it, but
Yeah.
is open and willing to show up to try to do the work. Then yeah, I mean, I think like we have to be all in for that. Like that is like the heart of a servant, right? That's a heart of like being of service to someone who wants to create the change.
That's great. Well, we really appreciate your time today. I took a lot out of this. I know Rich did as well. So I'm sure our entrepreneur listeners will, and we appreciate all the time you spent with us.
Thank you,
Thanks
Aimee.
for having me.
Please stick around for a few more minutes while Rich and I break down this episode.
What I appreciate so much about Aimee is she seems so balanced between the tactical blocking and tackling of financial excellence and then the mindset of financial excellence and working with people on both. It's rare. I'm not sure we've had anybody on the podcast yet that's been so balanced on those two items.
Yeah, and it's funny when you think about the yin and yang that you and I are, right? You're very psychology driven. I'm sometimes a little financial driven, and that's a little bit of our yin and yang. So when I heard that we had my virtual CFO coming on, the owner of my virtual, I automatically thought this is going to be a very strong finance conversation, for the duration of our conversation. And when I started going a different way, I started having the exact same feeling you had. This is not just a virtual CFO or fractional CFO type of entrepreneur. This is always somebody who's trying to change the perception of what are people really trying to get after? What are they trying to do? Because if you don't know where you're going on this Google map, as she talked about, then how do you know what your plan should be? How do you know if you should be growing 20% or 5% or increasing your prices or doing more work? How do you know? And way too often I've found myself growing for the sake of growing. I just know that if I get more top line, I'll figure it out later. And maybe that's an ego thing. Grow, 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 grow. Show the growth that you have. But if you don't really know where you're going, then what's the point? And I really love that growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And sometimes when you hear growth mindset, Rich, you think that growth mindset means you need to grow. Well, growth mindset is just really being open to the possibilities that exist. It's not just growing revenue in finance. It could be growing your happiness, growing how much time you spend with your family, growing your lifestyle, those kinds of things.
Well, I'm reminded of our former guest, Ryan Godfredson, who specializes in growth mindset, exactly as you had said.
Mm-hmm.
I think our formula is pretty cool, like awareness of the current state of thoughts, question those thoughts, get your desired state, and then get into transformation. She just highlights financial excellence is about mindset excellence first.
Yeah.
And she didn't say this word for word, but it's like, if you could put in all the tactics you want in your business to try to manage finances, but until you start thinking differently, you're going to self-sabotage.
Yeah, no question. Again, it goes back to if your mindset is wrong or your money story and beliefs are wrong, or you're limiting yourself. A lot of the affirmations that sometimes people tell themselves in a negative sense is I'm too busy. And the more times you say that to yourself, the more you believe it, because that's what you're telling yourself. And, but to me, if you talk about the group coaching program she's put together with the finance edit as well, as you kind of veer it, I love the name, the finance edit, because way too many entrepreneurs start their business to grow. So they grow their business. And that they need that moment where it's like, okay, let's edit here, because am I growing in the right area? And it's kind of, you mentioned a few times, like kind of like that airplane who starts off and kind of adjusts their destination the whole time. Entrepreneurs need that. and they need that coach to walk them through. And I love the fact that Aimee is not just, I'm going to help you reconcile your books, go through your cash flow, show you a little bit about how your finances are working, but really works with you to really accomplish, like, what are you trying to create and how are we going to create that together, and evaluate all the triggers along the way to make sure that you achieve the destination.
And it's interesting because lately I feel like the last couple of podcasts, more people are talking about setting your intention. It's not the first time we've heard those words, set your intention, and the importance of it.
That's right.
And a lot of times when we look at that in terms of goal setting, and goal setting around sales, or goal setting around what other things are setting intention? I would say sales and even personal growth, that type of thing. Very rarely have we looked at setting the intention around intention of your mindset and intention of how you're pocketing money that we talked about, or she talked about at the last part of the podcast, and setting the intention on having enough money for all of the buckets and being really intentional about it. And I think you nailed it. How simple of a concept is that? However, how rarely is that done with small businesses who are 1 to 5 million, which are the ones she works with?
Yeah, very rarely. And the last piece that I'll talk about here, Rich, is, put your intention down in pencil, because it's going to change.
Yes.
But you need to have that, what is the ultimate goal of what I'm trying to do here? And that doesn't just apply to business. That could apply to a social group you're involved in. It could apply to if you're doing part of a fundraiser. Like, what's the goal? What are we trying to accomplish? Write it down and go after it. But also know that there's certain behaviors that sometimes we do that aren't in alignment with where we're trying to go. And those are the ones I think that you need to edit.